What's going on, everybody? You're watching Tell the Story Doc on All of Life TV, and today I am excited. Y'all know I say that every week, and my church gets used to that. Like on Sundays, they're like, "We know you're excited," because I do get excited. I'm a passionate person, and I'm passionate because I have the pastor of Passion Creek on today, pastor, church planner, and YouTube extraordinaire is what I would. Trey. Yeah, I'm excited that we have Trey Van Camp on today. Before I let Trey say anything, I have to say this, right? If you are not following Trey on social media, if you're not subscribed to his channel and you're a pastor or a church planter or a church leader, you are failing right now. You're not in sin, but you're very close to it. So everybody welcome Trey Van Camp.
Man, I appreciate the kind words. I know all the people you've interviewed so far. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. The quality of the guests has dramatically tanked today, but come again next week, guys. No, you guys, you started so strong, man. I mean, it's all these guys. A lot of them I don't know personally, but just legends. And so I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. I'm a huge fan of you and your church, and I love what you're doing. In Daytona, and just been a fan from afar, and I appreciate you've supported me a ton throughout the years, and so happy to be here, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, he's this. It's a little bit of humor, a little bit of humility in what he just said, right? The guest list has not dropped at all. Actually, it's kind of like skyrocketed. It's gone up, or maybe let's say it's going in a different direction, because you are. I don't know if anybody knows it. You're our first white guest. And that's not because I've been avoiding. I have a lot of white friends. That's what people wouldn't know white friends say. But I do have white friends. But you're the first white person on the podcast.
I love it.
You're also the first West Coast pastor on the podcast. And you're the first real YouTuber on the podcast. So I'm excited about the conversation. Man, let me just tell you a couple of things. So the first time I ever saw you was obviously through YouTube, and it was actually through the viral video. Like, you have two viral videos, kind of like two big YouTube moments. The one where you took the family to Disney, which kind of like blew up your channel, right? Yep. And then Brady Shearer is like, "Yo, do y'all know this dude, Trey Van Camp? Are y'all not following him?" And Brady always makes us feel like we're 10 years behind on everything. And I was just like, oh, I don't know who Trey Van Camp is. And went to your page and started watching everything that you were putting out there. And if there's anybody who lives the idea of Tell the Story Doc, it's you. Because, man.
At least I used to.
Well, yeah,
I don't upload like I used to. Yeah,
you've had a shift, but man, you keep it real. You tell the story of what's going on with your life, your ministry, your struggles, all of that, man. And I've been blessed by that. I think I sub your channel on. I have like 6 YouTube pages, and so you get 6 up from me.
My man, that's what I'm talking about.
So, man, I've learned so much about you through your vlogs, through, your book, through just following you on social media. But where did your story start? If you had to point to a moment in time, or if I did it in Trey Van Camp way, when did you realize that Jesus was better?
Yes, bro, you actually listen and watch some stuff. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so the quick story about me is I'm a 4th generation Southern Baptist pastor. Each one warned the one of the next not to do it, and yet here we all are. And so I have roots in Missouri and Tennessee, and then they moved out here to Arizona because my aunt had lupus, and it was like the dry heat is good for him. But anyways, then my dad was actually a normal guy. And then when I say normal, not in ministry. And then at 40, God called him to ministry. And that was actually the moment for me. So we were always in church. I got saved when I was 5, baptized when I was 6, loved the church, killed it in Awanas. That was my thing, right? But then when I was 12, my dad got the family together and said, hey, we're leaving our church. They're sending us out. I don't think they use that language. Church planning wasn't a thing in 2003. And so, well, I mean, it was, but not not how we talk about it today. And so he said, hey, we have a launch team and it's all 5 of us. It's our family. And so I was the chair stacker and the slide. We literally the first like 3 months did those, and you know what I'm talking about? Those projectors.
With the film things.
Yes, that's how we did lyrics in 04, which they had projectors in 04. So this just showed my dad, he's a cowboy. He's like, I don't know, just get lyrics up there. So, yeah, but his call to me was, hey, pray every morning, every night, asking God for your spiritual gift. And I took that to heart. And so, you know, it's junior high. I had to move schools because of all of this. Same Phoenix area, but still, I have no more friends. Ironically enough, I was at the junior high that our church is meeting at now. Wow. And so, yeah, just got really moved a lot of my life. I just fell in love with the Bible then because I had no friend. I had no friends. I've always played basketball. So I still had like my travel team friends on the weekends and in practice, but I knew nobody at my school and I just could never connect until basketball season came up. And so until then, I'm like a weird introvert, extrovert kind of guy. So I just kept reading my Bible and just fell in love with the Sermon on the Mount, just like memorized it when I was 12, praying every morning, every night. God, what is my spiritual gift? God, what is my spiritual gift? And then it was about a year later, it was at a Discipleship Now conference, and this pastor who is now in jail, but it doesn't matter. The Holy Spirit used him in the moment. I think he's getting out soon, but he shared a gospel. I mean, he talked about 1 Kings 18 and how Elijah was willing to stand up when it felt like nobody else would, and then found out there was a bunch of other prophets who were there. They just needed somebody to kind of step forth. And I think in a very Joseph way, I interpreted that dream or the vision in a very, I'm the next Billy Graham, I'm the, you know, but I was like, I think, Lord, in a really humble way, okay, God, I'm in. Like, whatever this looks like for my generation. So I came forward. It was also the same day my little sister got saved. It was just really cool. And ever since then, so I was 13 then. I got licensed to preach when I was 16. I started, I married my first person, you know, officiated when I was 18, which is so stupid. Why? But I still don't, I mean, we're weird, man. And so I was preaching at different things. I was doing a once a month gathering at my high school. I think we baptized like 58 students my senior year. Just like, I was literally the poster child. Like, I was on the magazines and the Southern Baptist for Arizona. Like, look at this next guy. And the Lord had this last decade in mind of humbling me. But yeah, it was just all this amazing things. Went to California Baptist University. I thought I'd be a missionary overseas. And then a bunch of different things. You know, sorry if I'm going too much into this, but it wound up not doing that. I pretty much told God this: I will do anything but plant a church. Yeah. Because I've seen my dad plant a church, and that is not great. When I was a junior in high school, I had to sell my truck one summer. That was like 07, 08, the whole recession and all that madness. And it kind of gives away my age a little. But we're kind of close, aren't we? You just celebrated 34?
I'm 35.
35. Oh, yeah, the KD year. Okay. I'm 31, I think. Yeah, 31. So sold my truck just so we could eat that summer because church, like, everybody left because of the recession, all the stuff. So I was like, I want more dependability. So I was actually a part of a revitalization project in San Diego during my last 2 years at CBU. So it was like an hour and a half long drive, which was exhausting. But then I realized, oh, maybe that's not for me either. Like, the biggest fight is, can we move this piano or this organ from here to the other side of the stage? I'm like, I have no interest in this. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, you know? And just realizing, oh no, I think I'm wired to be a church planner. And so then I just did the whole NAM thing. Are you connected with NAM?
I'm not.
Are you Send Network?
No.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I did the whole apprentice thing, internship, all of that, and then planted my church technically at the age of 23. 1 month later, I turned 24. Can you believe it, man? That's abuse.
23. That's crazy.
What were you doing? Yeah, I know.
I was sinning at 23 years old. A lot. Actually, I got saved at 23, but yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Wow, that's so. All right, one, I have to say this: like, y'all are Baptists, but y'all are like charismatic Baptists. It sounds like, because you're like praying for your spiritual gift at 8 years old or whatever. It's like, man, I grew up missionary Baptist, and I don't even think we talked about gifts outside of Christmas Day. That was it. But man, that's really really
hilarious.
Cool. But it's also very interesting because you get this experience to live as a PK. And
Yeah.
That is a very odd experience. I wasn't a PK. I was a GPK, I guess you call it. My grandfather is a pastor. But my dad was a PK, obviously, and he hated it. Like, he was like, there's no way. But it sounds like you were on the opposite end of that. You were like, no, like, this is kind of what we do and just kind of who we are. And I can see where that has like a huge impact on your identity, even as like you're going into college and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. I was really grateful because my dad let me in on a lot pretty fast. He's like, if you're called to ministry, all right, here's what this meeting's about. Here's what we're struggling here. That's why he let me start to preach at 16. Like, he was very like, hey, let's go, which I'm really grateful for. He really poured gas onto the flame. But he gave me enough to know, Lord, do I want to do this? Because this is rough. This is hard. This is, you're always going to be misunderstood. You're going to be rejected. I have best friends one week, and now when I'm running into Target next week, they're not even going to act like I exist.
Right.
Like, I had to get used to that pretty quick. And that stuff I still haven't gotten over, but I at least know it's coming. So
this is random, but this is how my mind works. Have you ever seen that clip of that young kid who's on Oprah preaching? And
yes,
they're like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And he just keeps preaching. Like, was there ever a time that you felt like that? Or is it like, no, you actually feel like you had a grasp of the scriptures and a deep understanding of the gospel, even at a young age?
Yeah, I really do think we did it well. Like, I was weeping for my friends at night in junior high and high school, sharing the gospel every single day. I made sure I emulated preachers. I think that's like natural, but I made sure it wasn't my dad that I emulated, because like that's another weird thing. Like, you want to make sure, like, well, I know I'm appreciative of my dad, but I'm not my dad. I'm my own man, kind of syndrome. And so I would listen to preachers that are kind of opposite of him. Which is funny in retrospect now, but it probably helped shape me because obviously I'm influenced by him and then other things. But I don't think I have any recordings from back in the day, and I praise God for that. More and more, I'm like, I'm glad 5 years ago, like, I'm like scrubbing it offline, just like,
as time goes by, you just like delete the oldest ones. Like,
yes.
Yeah, let's let go of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it was genuine, and I think I had a good community around me to kind of slow me down in the right spots, but it's still kind of crazy. I preached at a pastor's convention when I was 17. So that gives you context. Like, what are we doing here, guys? It was more like, look at this. This kid can string sentences together, so it was one of those things.
Well, man, I've listened to probably a good handful of your sermons. You preach very well. And, I remember hearing Brian LaRich say one time, the way you learn how to preach is you just keep preaching, right? Like, just the more reps you get, the better you are at it. So you're over what you said 31, you're 13 or something years into preaching. And that matters because there are guys who, like, for instance, I've only been doing this for 9 or 10 years, preaching in this type of way, I would say. And I still feel like I need like 10 years of reps, like 10 years more before I kind of like really feel comfortable and find my voice. And the best preachers I've heard are guys who either started young or had fathers in the ministry, not spiritual fathers, but like their actual fathers were in the ministry.
Right.
But they were exposed to a lot of preaching, and it helped them kind of get past some of the things that other people struggle with in that time. So it's probably good that you were exposed to a lot of that earlier.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was just thinking, you made me realize a few years ago, I kept thinking, what's my voice? I've been preaching for I think it was the 10-year marker. I still don't know like my version of me. And I think that always changes, but I don't think I've thought that the last couple years, which maybe means I'm feeling more comfortable with the zone I'm in and how I prep and how I package things. I'm never content. I'm like my biggest critic about it. Yeah. But I at least feel like, okay, who I am off stage is really who I am on stage. And I kind of don't like this about white culture, but white culture, they actually prize that a ton. Like, talk to me the way you talk to me off the stage versus on the stage. My favorite preaching is black preaching of like, just like we are hooping and hollering. Like, I love that. And I wish I could do that. But my context, it'd be like, what are you doing, Trey? Like, we're not going to respond to you at all. So I've had to learn, just to be the most conversational as possible.
Yeah. So I'm Black and I don't do that either. I've jumped back in a little bit more in recent years just because I'm more understanding of our context and I know more of myself, right?
Yeah.
But I came to faith, and this is not about me, but I came to faith in a like super charismatic church. And then we took a hard right to a super duper reformed church. And again, I heard that same thing. It's like, man, you need to like preach the way that you would talk on every day of the week. And I used to pride myself on that as well. As I'm talking to people in our church, I'm like, hey man, the Byron you get on Sunday is the Byron you get on Wednesday, Byron you get on Friday, whatever. But now I am starting to realize like, no, we do need a little bit more. There's something to the gift and the craft of preaching that's more than just a TED Talk, right? Like you have
absolutely
pour something into your preaching, and it does take something from you. So I don't know, man. You can grow in that, and I think that you'll have some opportunities to play with that. Let me say this though. Your preaching in 2023 is different than your preaching in 2020. Like you seem a lot more confident. And again, I don't know if it's like what life did in 2020 to 2023, but like you seem just a lot more like confident about what you're saying. And it like you've always been gifted to me in preaching, but now it doesn't feel like you're just a preacher, like you're preaching as a pastor, and a pastor who has some life. So I'm way off script. I was supposed to roll into like this pun of a question about 1 Timothy 4. Like, do you feel like, people are ever despised you because of your youth? Or do you feel like you've been like Doogie Howser? Like, man, I'm young and, everybody loves it.
So I used to be so encouraged by 1 Timothy 4 until I preached through it a couple years ago and realized that Timothy was in his 30s. And so then I was like, oh, okay. So he's talking to me now. But 23-year-old Trey, he probably been like, what are you doing, man? Like, of course they're going to look down at you because you're young. Like, you're not even supposed to be in this position. So as I look back, and I was really blind to it at first. I, again, had so much success in just ministry and conversions, and especially my age, I had legit like fruit of showing evangelism in my life. But then, a lead pastor is a whole nother ballgame. And I just used to be shocked, like, how come we're not growing? How come, this series isn't grabbing people or whatever, like these outreach things we're doing. And I'm like, I actually think no matter how hard I work, I still have a baby face. Like I have one kid. Like there's just going to be such a gap I have to overcome. And then I kind of realized after getting some mentors around me, this first decade of ministry, especially because I started so young, it's more about what he's doing in me than what he's doing through me. The Making of a Leader by, I think, Robert J. Clifton, he talks about that, like a huge part of the process of developing leaders is that inner work. Like I so badly wanted God to do amazing things in the next 10 days. And I know now he's been working in me for the next 10 years and 20 years and 30. I've been reading this prayer recently. It starts out with, above all, trust in the slow work of God. Mm-hmm. And so as I look back, I'm actually grateful it's been slow. I'm grateful it's been unbelievably humbling. And as you say, I think if 10 years ago, as I was starting to be a lead pastor, I think my answer would have been, I love to preach. I guess I have to pastor. And now, and I love that you mentioned that, now it's like, I love to pastor. It's also fun to look at the craft of preaching, but I'm doing it more. I'm a pastor who preaches, not a preacher who has to pastor. And I think that's kind of changed the way we kind of design everything. And I'm also like, look, I'm still the youngest lead pastor in my city. I know that that's a shot against us. But whoever comes, I'm going to deeply care for you. I probably got more energy some of these old men around here, but we're not in competition with any of these guys at all. We actually have a great relationship with all the other pastors in our city. But yeah, I've kind of come to grips with that. Like, my age is going to be a weakness for a long time. My grandma, who is, she's like the defining link. So her dad was a pastor. She married a pastor. Now her son is a pastor, son-in-law is a pastor, and now her grandson. But she said, Trey, you are always going to be too young to be a pastor. And then the next day you'll wake up and you'll be too old. She's like, you're never the right age. People are always going to find something wrong with where you're at in life. And so she's like, just serve the Lord and the people right in front of you.
Man, that's cool. That's so cool. That's so cool. Hard in some places, but cool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the youngest guy on our block right now. I don't know if I'm the youngest in the city, but I'm the youngest guy on our block, and it brings a lot of challenges, but it's also kind of cool because there are people who give you a shot just because you're young, honestly. Yeah. Because I don't know if they think that you're not as rigid or stuck in your ways as some older pastors might be, and that's not always a negative. Sometimes you should have a system for how you do things.
Sure.
But then you get people who are just like, man, if you're here in 10 years, like I'll give you a shot. Or once you've experienced some things, I mean, we hear that a lot. And I'm 35. My wife is in her 40s. We have 3 kids, but we're still just like way too young for a lot of people. And
it's funny.
We got our first 70-year-old member recently. Well, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. I take that back. But we got a 70-year-old member recently, and it felt so good to hear that, like, despite my age, she was like, no, I trust you to lead me in this season of my life. And I'm sure you felt a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I have a really seasoned saint in our church, a couple. They serve the Lord. They serve so much at our church. And she came up and told me, and I don't mean to open up this whole can of worms, but I was supposed to be hired at another church in California last year. I think it's been over a year now, I think. Yeah, a year and a half ago. And so it was just a crazy mess. But she came up to me like 3 months after the fallout, and she said, Trey, I love that you're my pastor now more than ever. She's like, there's a humility about you that happened from the thing. I know it didn't feel great, but there's an anointing that's come from it, and we're just honored to still be a part of this. So that meant a lot to me. That was helpful. I think there is something about suffering in front of your folks and just staying strong and persevering in it. Those things begin to add up, and they begin to really listen to you and allow you to actually shepherd their soul.
Yeah. That's good. All of that is good. Man, I'm just processing the fact that Dad didn't start a church until 40s. So he had that experience. He had that life experience, even though he didn't have the pastoral experience. He had the life experience. He had lived, 2,000 years ago, he had probably lived a full life at that point.
True.
But now, we'll say, he's lived a couple generations, or at least a generation in some. You are the flip of that, where you start super duper early in that, and you don't have as many life experiences. I've heard you, especially in your book, which we'll talk about the book in a second, but like, I've heard you speak about anxieties that you have. Do you think that's a part of it? Like, is that any part of the fact that you face some anxiety in leading and pastoring, that you started so early, and that a lot of the life experiences that are coming at you now, many guys experienced those things before they started, or before they got into the ministry or whatever? Like, do you think that's a piece of it?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I'm wise enough to fully know the answer to that, but sir, I would say like when I was 23, it's like, who can go through so much before you launch a church at 23? Like, there's a lot that you just can't get to. I will say a lot of my anxieties, I would like to argue, are uniquely ministry related. And so like when I talk to people that are not in the ministry who've just gone through life, there's other things they've gone through, I've lost my grandparents now and different things, but there's just stuff that they go through. But it feels like a lot of the pastors I talk to, no matter when they start, those things I'm mentioning, those hurt all of us. Right. And I've actually seen, have you seen that article that came out like last week or so about, you know, the guy quitting and why, like,
Oh yeah, the blog post that
bosses,
everybody's going
yeah,
crazy
all that.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really wanted it and I didn't. I was like, I want to use this as like I might do like a YouTube video reaction and go and buy the nonanxiouspastor.com or, you know, yeah. Anyway. So, but with that situation, where was I going with that? Oh, people were saying like, man, you know, concrete, like you think pastoring's hard. You should go out and work with your hands, you know, like you should go sweat. Like this is nothing. But I literally I had stem panels over my head all day this morning. I worked for 4 hours pouring concrete from 5 to 9 a.m. and then rushed here to do this interview. I live the blue collar life, half of my life still sometimes. I would much rather do concrete. I would much rather sweat every day in the hot sun, lift these heavy things and pour concrete and shovel because those things don't talk back to you as much. Yeah. They don't, you know, they don't betray you. You know, it's finished projects and they're done. It's so nice to be like, yeah, I helped build that house. Like when you drive by, like, yeah, and that's done. And that job I never have to go back to it again, hopefully. Yeah. So some of this stuff is just natural, but yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. Here's what it is. I know a lot of people who are also, you know, did ministry at my age, but I became the lead pastor at so young. And that I think I took on a burden that I don't know if I did everything right in my whole life. I wasn't ready for it. And I now retrospectively realize how gracious God has been. Yeah. It could have been a whole lot worse. I've really had it easy in some senses. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but yeah. I have noticed, like, what I'm realizing now though. So when I look back, I'm like, man, that was a disadvantage. But now I'm like, man, I have an advantage. I have a leg up. Like when I'm 40, I will have gone through some stuff that another typical 40-year-old wouldn't have gone through. So I'm actually really excited about the compound effect, you know, moving forward as I continue to walk in ministry, which I'm with you, man. We're not getting out of this thing. We're sticking in. All my favorite people, they're stepping out of pastoral ministry. Yeah. Part of me is jealous, but I ain't going to do it. You know what I'm saying? So
you have watched the podcast, obviously. And you've probably seen.
I'm with you, man. I'm commenting. I'm a fan of this podcast.
Yeah. You've seen my rants too. You follow me on Twitter, so you see the unadulterated version of me, the unedited version of me. Man, I don't know if you know this. Maybe you do. But, well, I don't know. I'll just roll into it this way. You dropped your book a year ago, Non-Anxious Pastor. I was along the ride. I was a part of your Patreon for a while.
Thank you.
I saw a lot of it coming together. Slogans Are Broken was pretty cool, but I think Non-Anxious Pastor is better, right?
Yeah.
When I read it for the first time, Trey, I was like, dude, we experienced, like, this is my life. Like I not every bit of it, but the way it opens, I thought about writing a book right out of, 2021, 22 time. And my intro would have been the same as yours. Like,
wow.
Defining moments. I've never experienced anxiety before in my life, ever, until 2020. Like, never. Matter of fact, my wife, she's experienced it all of her life. And I remember, like, not looking down on her, but just, like, not really understanding, right?
Yeah.
And then 2020 hit, and I found myself in the same place. And I just remember it was a Tuesday in April, and it was a week before Easter, and I almost lost it. And I was like, I got to go to the emergency room. And
wow.
Same type deal.
Same story.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Also, I'm a hypochondriac. So we're the same with that. I've been a hypochondriac all my life, honestly.
Yes, me too.
I've done some work to kind of figure out where that came from. However, it was very refreshing feeling like someone else knew what it was like to feel that. Because even the other pastors I've seen who've opened up about anxiety or depression or some mental struggles, they tend not to, like, express the moment of their, like, biggest weakness, unless it's like I mean, obviously Pete Scazzaro, like we know, like he opens the door to a lot of stuff, but there are not a lot of guys who are like, hey, this was my lowest moment. And I still have some moments. Like there are times I had, an anxiety attack yesterday. Just hypochondriac stuff and thinking through all of that. I say this long intro to lead us into the idea of the non-anxious pastor. And I love what you did with the book. I'm a fan of Failure of Nerve, but if you're not a reader, it could be a tough book to get through. And now we have a concise version, and that's what I call the non-anxious pastor.
I'm going to clip this.
What made
I might get some actual sales.
Hopefully,
I'm kidding.
What made you say, like, I have to write this book and I have to write it now? Like, what pushed you to do that?
I love that question. I appreciate that. So it started out from a sermon series in 2020, getting ready for the election. We were in 1 Timothy, and I saw, like, Paul talking to Timothy about just hang in there, like keep fighting the good fight. And so I was moved by that, and that's actually what created the Slogans Are Broken sermon series. And I started to see just some of the divisiveness in the church culture and just the way the church was responding. I was just horrified by it. And so I did a very, just a version of that. And I was like, man, that's like, whatever this was, I'm feeling really connected to it. So let's see if I can write a book. So I did Slogans Are Broken, and it was awful. Like, it's actually fully, I have it on my bookshelf still. It's technically a book, but there's so much of those elements wound up going to the non-anxious pastor. So I had fun writing it, and I shared it with a couple people, and they were like, you don't know who your audience is, first of all, and this would be great if you were 60 and you're seasoned. I was being very preachy to the American church. So I'm like, that's not going to work. And so I just kind of, but from that series, somehow, I don't even remember the journey. I found people like Edward Friedman. I found things like Steve Cuss, Peter Stanke, I think his name is, where it's congregational systems, family systems theory, and realizing, oh my gosh, this whole election cycle, all of this is about anxiety. And we have learned the trick that the most anxious person in the room is usually who controls the room, unless there's somebody who combats that with the non-anxious presence. And so I just fell in love with it as an idea. So I started eating it up, just thinking about it. And I've really, so think about that. So I've just been reading a lot of books, really moved by that. Alongside of that, been like rocked my world about spiritual formation. It was just like water for my thirsty soul. I'm in a Baptist background. I grew up on systematic theology and evangelism. Like, those are the two things, And so I love the whole, like, I was in that whole Reformed thing of the 2010s and all of that. And, but there was still, I feel like whatever the system this is producing angry leaders. It's producing, mean, like vile leaders, and then they get caught later, or just burnt out. And so I'm like, I don't want that. And so I was like, how does congregational family systems theory and spiritual formation, do these things have something? Can I like mesh this together? All the while in 2020, I realized, because for a little while, I've been making YouTube videos since 2017. And so I'm so great at getting so few subscribers, just a slow process. It's hilarious. I've made like 700 videos and I'm not even at 10,000 subscribers yet.
630 are live on your channel right now.
My man, I've taken a lot down too. And so I realized, like, people like you, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm having like Charlie Mitchell reaching out to me. Like, I'm having Byron, okay, I actually want to make content for these guys. If they're listening, I'm in, and so my YouTube channel started to shift towards pastors, and my Patreon grew from like 13 subscribers to 80 in like 3 months, and they were all pastors. I was like, what is this? Like, this is the coolest thing. I have pastors paying me to just like, and it mainly was like, hey, here's how you vlog. Like, I'm not acting like they were asking me, how do you do ministry? But there was still like, I had some sort of influence there. And so I think realizing that the light bulb turned on, I don't need to write a slogans are broken book for the church. I need to write an encouraging word. I'm the Timothy, not the Paul. I am saying, hey, other Timothys, man, this sucks, doesn't it? Here's some things that I'm starting to figure out based off church history. I'd like to think my book, I hope, inspired people to read a bunch of other books, because I'm like pretty clear. Hey, I got this idea from this person. I had a ton of footnotes. Make sure you read these guys. And so really the biggest thing was identity and practice. So the identity piece, I talked about, like, I think the first chapter there was don't chase greatness, choose goodness. And so it's this whole idea, like, we just feel that pressure in the social media age. We have to have so many followers and it has to be so successful. Our church has to be so huge. And I love your input on that and like the beauty of a small church. I think that's really great. And then the next chapter was about don't carry the weight, care and weight. And so like, that's where like family systems theory is huge for me. I'm like an enmeshed leader where I have thought, like, if somebody's sinking in sand, I'm a compassionate leader by jumping in the quicksand with them.
So
but I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not the one who walks by and go, you idiot, why did you jump in the quicksand? Because some pastors are like that, right? I just speak the truth. Why did you jump in it? Instead, it goes, no, I'm going to stay on solid ground, but I'm going to figure out a way to lend you a hand to bring you up, but you're going to have to bring some effort. You have to bring yourself up as well. And so I'm just super enmeshed in that way. Any of their problems are my problems. If their life is in trouble, it's because of me. I messed it up. So I realized I just have so many people pleaser tendencies within me. And so I've just had to do I have to have spiritual directors in my life, mentors in my life. Like, realizing outcomes are none of my business has been so hard. And so I've had to die to a lot of that. I think in the book, it's been over a year now. So it's like outcomes are none of our business, but our outlook is. So like how we view this situation can be healthy, but we are supposed to care and we need to wait on the Lord and not like rush the process for him. And then the other thing that I got really passionate about that then led into talking about practices for pastors was like, oh, my job is not to motivate people, it's to mature them. And so like, I used to think my call was to say, hey, come to Christ and you will lower your hostility. Jesus says in Matthew 7, the storm hit both houses. Yeah. So, okay, come to Christ and we will in community higher, level up your maturity. That way, when hostility comes, you can withstand because of your maturity. So that's the goal. I can't promise anything about hostility. I don't know how bad America's going to get, or this community, or the economy. I am not in control of that at all. And so, and that's what's kind of rewired. Sorry if I'm going on too long. That's what's kind of rewired my whole process on how I pastor. Like, oh, maturity is the goal. Ephesians 4, like, it's everywhere. Like, James 1, it's all about counting it all joy, various trials. We are coming to completion. The head is Christ. Like, it needs to be this opportunity for maturity. And we have found the greatest way to begin to point people to maturity is creating a way of life or a rule of life. So in my book, this feels too pitchy, so you can delete this, but you're not going to edit it though. Sorry. But it's like, man, the digital space, we have to talk about how do we interact in the digital space. Dinner, right? So like fasting, but also hospitality, and then devotional, right? So like things like Sabbath have rocked my world. So it was really like a lived out project in my own life since 2018 that really got laser focused in 2020. I started just writing my thoughts because I love to read. So I'm like, I've read so much, I'm starting to get the rhythm of what it looks like to write this type of book. And I just thought, what the heck? I love making stuff. I'm not going to take myself serious. This is not going to be a bestseller. It was the bestseller. I almost beat Craig Rochelle one day on Amazon and then quickly fell off the list. But hey, that's my claim to fame. Me, Craig Rochelle, and John Tyson were hanging out on the same list for about like 13 hours.
Oh,
so
man, that's a powerful group right there, man.
That's it's like your podcast, I just find a way.
Man, what I appreciate about the book, and I apologize if you feel like I'm repeating myself, or apologize to the people watching. I've read Friedman. I've read Mark Sayers. I've read, a lot of those guys. And
you read a lot of same people. Yeah.
Well, I follow whatever I see you reading.
Nice.
Now, actually, somebody gave me Friedman before I even, like, when they heard I was going to plant, they were like, read this book. And I read it and I was all about it. And then I actually started planting a church. And like, you can get all of this information, but when you're like actually doing the work, it's hard to remember those things. When you're sitting across from this person and you have to make a hard decision, but their life situations and the things that are going on, you tend to go back to your default, no matter what new information is there, which pushes me right back to what I was jumping into, was like this idea of you creating new rhythms, these spiritual rhythms that are going to keep you in the place where you're living out your identity every day is important. I have not been able to do that well. I want to do that a lot better. Right. So I was introduced to this world of spiritual disciplines or spiritual rhythm, however you want to put it, during the pandemic. And it saved my life. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
It saved my life. You probably heard the story. We did a 3-month church-wide sabbatical. We shut down the church. Silence and Solitude is probably my best friend during that time, and I felt
I was so impressed with that, man. I was like, what courage to just, hey, we're taking 3 months off. I was so impressed, but keep going. Sorry.
I cried a lot. But man, I felt like I was doing so well, and then when you get back into the groove of just like the momentum of church planting, right? Like everything's rolling, new people are coming, people are getting baptized, people come to know Jesus. You got an opportunity to get a building, you start to fall away. Like, what's been the thing that has kept you on that path of saying like, no, I'm dedicated to these rhythms and it's a part of who I am?
I love that question. I recently heard Tyler Staton. He actually describes, because a lot of people talk about the disciplines and like when you pick a few of them, it becomes a rule of life, which is a regula, which is like the trellis of the vine, all these things. And it's always like kind of been confusing to me because I'm not agricultural, and most of us aren't. So it's like, cool, yeah, like this thing that the vine has to stick to. I don't know. But he actually is saying like view them more as an anchor. And so pick a few of these things. And he goes, the reality is storms will come, but you need practices that anchor you down, that yes, you're moving back and forth. Life gets tough, but you don't ever leave this space that God has for you, right? Like you get tossed to and fro, but you're not going to go hit that iceberg. And so, so for our church this year, we've been at formedbyjesus.com. We're trying to like slowly go through some really essential practices. And the more I'm thinking through these, the 3 that have changed my life that I've stuck with the most are Sabbath, scripture. It's obvious, but say it out loud. Sabbath, scripture, and simplicity. And so we're trying to make those like the 3 anchors for our church. But we're actually seeing it's really hard, and it's like bringing up a lot of tension. It's bringing up idols. Like especially the simplicity one has been insane. Like we have experienced so much friction and pushback. I don't know how much I can share now because like, we're in the middle of it right now, but it's been crazy. So what I mean by that, so Sabbath, I'm able to stick to it because my wife's committed. We're all in. We've been doing this we started doing it before COVID hit. Like before my anxiety hit, I was doing Sabbath, which was helpful. But yeah, it's a 24-hour period. And I long for it. Some weeks we don't do great at it, ministry, and I do other bivocational jobs. So sometimes we just give ourselves grace. You know what? This week it was a 5-hour Sabbath. Oh, well, we did something. So how do I keep doing it? Like it's just a family thing and we just commit to it. Scripture, I'm a Baptist. I always had the Bible before breakfast. So like, that's always just been kind of an easy thing. The question is, am I tuned in? Am I actually allowing it to move me? I have to say this to my church all the time and to myself. Scripture reading is not about marking off tallies for God. It's about marking out time with God. Because I'm like a high achiever, so I just want to read the whole 1-year Bible plan always and do it in 6 months and prove, hey, I'm great, or whatever. And so slowing down and giving myself those rhythms, I don't have to check anything off the list. I just need to be in the Word every day. But then simplicity has been the biggest. So like 5 to 10 a.m., I'm not on my phone or anything social media, anything digital. That has changed my life. So I call it 5-10 to win. And from 5 to 10, I'm just not on anything. Being in ministry, you never know what kind of text message you're going to wake up to or a nasty email, and it can ruin your whole day. Have you ever read At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof?
I haven't read it.
It's great, but it's essentially you have a green zone, a yellow zone, and a red zone. It's all about energy levels. So it's like, this is also hard about church planning. Like
I've heard him talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're in control of our schedule, right? So like it gets difficult. Like when do I do what? And I realized a lot of my life was off because I would do the hard things during the sleepy times of my day where I just don't have energy. And so I actually get going at 5 a.m. From 5 to 10, I'm efficient. From 10 to 3, I am not efficient. So I need to be with people on a podcast. Like, okay, this is like life-giving. I need to do like very intentional life-giving things. And then I kind of pick up energy again around 4. And that's why we go to dinner with people and groups and all that kind of stuff later in the night. But so from 5 to 10, 5:10 to win the morning, I need to do my most important tasks.
Yeah.
Sermon prep, prayer walk, workout, all that kind of stuff. And then from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., also I call it 5:10 for them. I'm back off my phone, and now I'm with my family, or I'm with my together group, or I'm just with people. I'm focused on my kids. I'm focused on my wife. And so I still have from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. the ability to be on the phone, because I think it's good to know what's going on in culture and, watch some things and be encouraged. And so that's really the simplicity piece, digital simplicity. It's really transforming people more than they know.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just generating so much anxiety, especially in my early years of church planning. Just, I don't know. I'm a terrible person, so maybe you haven't done this, but like you check the people who you launched around the same time with, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then like they post their amazing Sunday and it just pops up and you're like, oh my gosh, well, we had 27 at ours, but glad you had 27 baptisms. So like learning to count it all joy though, like those people aren't the enemy at all. But in your heart, you're just like, so like I've had to just go, Mondays, we ain't on social media much at all, especially if that day before was bad. So just kind of those rhythms, out of that comes all sorts of other practices and rhythms. I'm actually kind of introducing fasting again in my life because I've noticed I've been running to food for comfort. So I'm like, whoa, okay, big red flag. I need some more discipline there. And it always helps. It fuels so many other things. But those have been the big 3 for me. And I think I could argue it's the big 3 for our modern age. Sabbath, so we can become a people of rest in a world of hurry. Scripture, so we can become a people of truth in a world of lies. And then simplicity, so we can become a people of contentment in a world of consumption.
Yeah, that's good, man. I'm a fan, so I've heard you. Not a fan. I follow you. I'm a follower. I've heard you say that. I have a question. The simplicity part, you kind of put a lot on the digital simplicity part of it, but in your day-to-day life, when it comes to what you have acquired, all that stuff, how has that been? Because you probably have a lot of camera equipment.
That's something I've been doing on YouTube. I've been doing like these little 1-minute shorts, so like vlogs, but just short versions. So I actually did post a lot in August, and a lot of it was the journey of, hey, how do I get rid of digital? How do I begin to embrace digital simplicity more? And then the next week in our sermon series was material simplicity. So we wound up cleaning out the closet. We donated some stuff in our kids' room. And so, actually over the summer, because as a pastor, you got to be doing these things before you even preach it. So over the summer, I made a major mistake. I took over half of my gear and just donated it. Like, just gave it away to people I knew without even telling, like, hey, here, boom, hey, get this, hey, get that. Because, especially back then, I actually wasn't producing as much content. I didn't have as many ideas of what I want to do in the future. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I need that stuff back. So it's been really annoying of like, okay, I think I went a little too far. And I've actually seen in some of the material simplicity books I read, like by Josh Becker, who was formerly a pastor. Now he's just all about minimalism. And he talks about it on a blog and a book, The More of Less, which is a pretty good book. But he says some of these like higher dollar stuff, like maybe it's wise to just put in the closet or in the attic for 6 months, see if you need it. And if you didn't need it after 6 months, give it away. Yeah. And so, I'm actually the biggest thing that I have noticed, like, because we had like you were even a part of like the Vlogger Ministry crew. Like you've been around for a while with some of the communities I've made. Everybody would talk about gear and the newest stuff they bought. I really have never been a gearhead. I don't know what kind of camera I'm using. I don't know the lens I have. Like I shoot in auto. Like I'm just a storyteller and I want to use these things, but I'm not obsessed about the latest thing. So that's helped me a lot. I am not falling prey to like buying the next item. I say that, but I have a Sony A7 IV. I have a Rodecaster Pro with the Blackmagic. You know what I'm saying? So, but I've been doing this for 8 years. And the cool thing is Patreon has paid for all of it. So that's what makes my wife. So thank you. You paid for this is what I'm trying to tell you. So I appreciate that.
You didn't get much from me. You might have got a SanDisk card.
My man, I needed it. I needed that extra XLR cord.
I am a gearhead, and I probably need to sell half of this stuff. To be honest, we're doing some stuff with it. Man, I love all of that. Man, the spiritual rhythm stuff, the rule of life stuff, all of that is like deeply challenging when I see you live it out. And challenging in a good way, not where I feel defeated or anything, but like it makes me want to like, okay, let's revisit these things. Let's try to do them. Even you saying like, man, sometimes it's a 5-hour Sabbath. Like,
oh yeah,
my wife and I are like very black or white, right? So like, we're like, oh, we didn't start the Sabbath when sun went down. We probably just did it this week, like, so we
get it.
We need those reminders that like, no, we can still do these things. And it's not about like a checklist. It's just about us like spending that time with Jesus, giving that time back to Jesus by either saying, I'm going to forsake myself in this moment, or I am looking to Jesus for, what I need in this moment. So all of
I've had a hard time like convincing pastors to do this. And now this last year, we've really focused on convincing our congregation to do this. Yeah. And it's been humbling, man. It's been hard. It's been realizing, okay, there is grace. There's grace upon grace. But also there isn't like cheap grace, like the Bonhoeffer. This is costly. But so what's helped us is, let's go with Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer talks a lot about the cost of discipleship, right? I love that book. I'm actually rereading it. This year has been a reread year. So that's one that I read last week. And he's like, look, this thing costs. Like, let's make no mistake. It's a narrow way. But I love Willard because he goes, yeah, but also there's a cost to non-discipleship. And I think that's been the call from my context, is spending more time saying, look, everything's a practice. You're being formed either by the world or by the word. Right. And so you can be intentionally formed by Jesus or unintentionally formed by the world. And here's what the digital world's doing to you. Spending 10, 12 minutes, just boom, boom, stats, personal story, this, that. Here's what materialism has done to you. So we have had to spend a lot of time. Look, this isn't a checklist. It's not about passing a test. It's about placing your trust. We're having to say these things over and over and over again. This is an invitation, not I'm not forcing anybody to do any of this. You can live your life. In fact, last week I said, if you're happy, don't do any of these things. I'm calling people who have that holy discontentment, who are like, should life be more than this? Okay, come. I got some things for you. But if you're content, just chill, man. Don't do anything I'm telling you to do. It's going to hit you eventually, right? Yeah. So we've had to, and I think maybe that'll help you, like, okay, this costs a lot. This is hard. But what is it doing to me when I'm not doing those things? And so doing that math has made me go, that's why I'm miserable. Yeah. So I can't be I don't want to contribute at all to this anxiety myself. So I'm going to be doing these other things that always are life-giving. And sometimes they're not, because you hit a wall, you hit a dark night of the soul, but man, it's always worth it.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Last thing I'll say about this, another good thing you've done is told the stories of the people in your church. So I was blessed by hearing, I can't remember the woman's name, but I'll never forget her story. She was talking about Sabbath and how she's a single woman. I think she was divorced, maybe.
Lisa Thompson. She's wonderful.
Yeah. And she was talking about like her work schedule and the thing, meeting with a group and like her together group and all that stuff, and her still finding time, in her schedule. And she was honest about it not being super easy, right? And it being hard because of her story, her background, and all that stuff. And I think people need to hear those things. We actually had a sermon series that's supposed to start in 2 weeks about rule of life called Formed, Right?
Cool.
But
BuyJesus.com. I'm kidding.
But we're gonna push it back a little bit. I don't feel like I'm spiritually ready to lead that.
It's hard, man. Dude, you're inviting warfare. I'm not saying everything is inviting warfare, right? But we have just felt it crank up since it's been hard. It's been really hard. Even just 2 weeks ago, I told Caleb, my associate, should we keep doing this? This is exhausting in the best way, but it's tough, man. If it's not fully thought through and fully lived through, man, like you can be damaging to people. So that's what it's playing with fire, you know?
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't it's just like what you said. I don't want to introduce something to someone that I'm not doing, right?
Yeah.
And or that I'm not doing well, right? And that well doesn't mean perfect. It just means that I'm not fully committed to it, right? And I don't preach well when I'm not fully convinced of something. Actually, I try not to preach at all about stuff I'm not fully convinced of. But I just said, man, let's push it back. Let's give some time for us to see more work happen in our lives. Well, look, man, we've been on for a minute. I got to talk to you about YouTube.
Let's do it.
We would talk this long.
I'm sorry.
Talk about YouTube. So I told y'all before, Trey has a YouTube channel, and that's where I first kind of ran into him. And I've always asked myself the question, what pushed you into YouTube? Because I've seen a lot of pastors who, you mentioned this, your Patreon, full of pastors who are like, okay, I see that it's working. Let me do it too. And the interesting part is I question whether that's like a gift that you have that a lot of people want, but it's hard for a lot of people to do. So what pushed you into that YouTube space initially, and why is it that so many pastors can't keep it up?
Yeah. So part of my story being a pastor's kid is I was disgusted with my dad's churches. Well, it was my church at that time. Their website, no video presence. And so in high school, I took graphic design class. I then watched videos on how to make videos and edit and all this stuff. So I kind of gained these editing skills before I knew I would use them for myself. And so that was always there. I never really considered myself a video guy, although I proposed to my wife by making a whole video with the green screen. And it's just kind of funny how it's kind of always been there in my story. I just never really owned it. The biggest thing was I've always been a productivity guru. So a guru, I like following the gurus. And so I never watched YouTube ever. I thought it was a waste of time. I thought it was just cat videos and Charlie Bit Me, all that stuff. So even all the way up through college, I never watched it. And through the first year of my church plant, never watched YouTube. Seriously, never. And so I didn't know about it. And then this is the funniest thing. I was on Facebook and I saw an ad for Gary Vee. And he said something, and I think it was tactics to reach people on social media. I was like, okay, sure. Clicked on it. And then the second video I saw was his Ask Gary Vee with Casey Neistat. And I was like, who's Casey? And so I was kind of introduced. I was intrigued by his interview. So then I went to his channel, and then I was like, what? This is YouTube? So I just fell in love with the whole storytelling genre of vlogging. And so I literally, for 1 month, I just woke up every day, watched the newest vlog, and then caught up on a couple of his other vlogs. I bought a Sony a6300 on Craigslist. I got just a cheap microphone at Walmart, and within a month, I uploaded my first video because I didn't know anybody was doing this. So this was late 2016. I went to Israel at the very end of 2016, so I've daily vlogged that and uploaded it in the beginning of 2017, and I was hooked, and I just kept vlogging. And I would do the daily vlogs, in March and August and all this stuff. And it would just be me, hey, I'm starting a church and I have a new family. Let's just look at the journey. And so that's literally what it was. I, for a month, was a student of Casey Neistat and try to do everything he was doing, but in a ministry context. But then I was all over the place because that was my thing. Let's document my life. So especially back then, we still had Disney annual passes. And so anytime we go to Disneyland, I make it into a vlog. Well, those are the ones I'd actually get views on, which I now know because of, algorithms and searching and all this stuff. I didn't understand that world, which wound up hurting me because I would get so many subscribers from Disney vlogs. And then the next vlog is ministry. They're like, who is this guy? guy, unsubscribe, which then hurt my channel performance. It's a whole thing. But yeah, so within a year, this is me, probably not being a very good Baptist. My wife was like, hey, it was just one of those random conversations, like the questions you say you ask all the time. She asked me, who's the one person you'd want to meet in the world? I've met I've met Michael Jordan. I went to his Michael Jordan camp. All the legends from the Suns, like my papa has season tickets. So I've met everybody in the NBA. I have a friend who's an MLB umpire, so I know a lot of baseball. So it's like none of that world interests me anymore. I was like, I've actually met almost all my heroes for pastors. I think Tim Keller was on my list. Never got to meet him. But I said, you know what? Like Casey Neistat would be like super cool to meet. If those who don't know, he's a famous YouTuber, right? Legend who kind of like created the really good style vlog genre. Within a week, I got a phone call from another YouTuber who said, hey, I got invited to Samsung's event held by Casey Neistat in New York City, and I'm allowed to bring a +1. Will you come with me? I was like, what? So I went, got to meet all those guys, MKBHD, iJustine, David Dobrik was there. Just like, it was like crazy. And I was like, is this like my path? Like I'm technically, and when they would ask who I am, I'm like, yeah, I'm a pastor who vlogs and all this stuff. So yeah, it was just a really fun journey. I just kept doing like the next thing and would kind of get through to new opportunities. And I think from there, I started to get noticed because then Brady Shear kind of shouted me out pretty quickly after that. And so that's when a lot more people kind of came my direction who were pastors. And that's what began to shift, because the people who were giving me feedback was pastors who were like, man, I'm enjoying this story. Like, I get that, where you show up to church and everything's locked and now you don't know what to do. Like I would just share just the ups and downs of life. I think I shared too much in retrospect. Those ministry blues on Monday, I would create a vlog on that day. So yeah, I think it's been able to minister to people, but it just kind of morphed into that.
I dig it, man. So opposite of you, I love YouTube, and I've loved you too.
I do now.
I've loved it since 06, I think.
Man,
I've always been, I consume a lot of YouTube. Anyway, I never even thought about vlogging until I saw your stuff. Like, never thought about it at all. And again, like, there's so many guys that like are terrible at it. Like, I'm one of them. I'll go out one day and ride around and do a lot of stuff and look in the back seat like, oh, my camera was in the back the whole time. Nice. I didn't record a thing. You have kind of helped coach quite a few people. What is usually the thing that like keeps them from succeeding in that?
Yeah, that's good. The edit. I love editing. That's my favorite thing. I want to take some music. I want to create an emotion. I want to see a story. So I think it's why I like preaching. It's like taking these concepts, trying to find the hook, take them up into this climactic journey. So like, that's what I'm obsessed with. And so I find joy in that with preaching. And then I was like, oh, I can do this in the video world and actually do some music. And so the biggest hurdle is people saying, I want to do this, but I don't want to edit. I'm like, dude, all of us are broke. We can't hire an editor. Good luck. The other is just people not knowing who their audience is. So a lot of pastors are like, oh, I want to reach non-believers, but I also want to reach people in my church, but I really would love pastors to like this channel. So it's like, sadly, especially today, you can't make that for everybody. So you got to pick one lane. And so you just see them kind of move different lanes. I also see a lot of people just chasing the latest trend. And so sadly, Christian YouTube, it's trending, I don't think, in a really healthy direction. It's just a lot of
bring that up.
Really gossipy, or just making you just look at the things of the world. And sure, like maybe their critique is right, but why are we even talking about this in general is my thing. So, and I fell into that a little bit. I think I try to be healthy about it, but I was trying to talk about current events, because I was like, hey, let's try to leverage this. I have ideas. What if this is a smarter thing to get my YouTube in a better space? And it never happened, which I'm kind of glad for. So
you did it differently though, because you would talk about that thing for like 3 minutes, and then you're like telling us about these 12 books you read. He's like, yo, this person said this. Your point,
dude, it made so many people mad because it was just book reviews, but it was like with a hook. But then like you see the analytics, and it's like, oh, like I mentioned, I'm like, now read this book. They'd be like, boom, I'm gone, I'm out of here.
yeah. Man, I'm with you, man. Christian YouTube is kind of The only way I can say it is it's in a very weird space. It's in a very weird space, which makes me upset that you don't upload as much as you used to. But I understand you're a man with a family and a growing church and a lot of life that you have to deal with, man. And
so yeah, I guess like writing my book was my first excuse, and that takes a lot. And then just getting kicked in the gut with ministry things, I just didn't have it in me. Yeah. But then like what's sad is I uploaded like 20 videos in August, but it's all on shorts, and so all my subscribers, they didn't even know I did that. I'm like, what? YouTube system, it's pretty messed up. So yeah, still tweaking, still thinking what I can do, but yeah, you know, it's just that to me, it's like the emotional weight of everything else has finally hit me. Being 24, 25, doing those vlogs, actually, so much of it was my age. I just had energy. I remember, man, Pastor Parks, Derek, he reached out one time and he said, hey, I just want to meet. So we did a Zoom call. I was so excited. He's like, I just want to know how you have energy to do this. Like, how do you pastor and daily vlog and do this? And I was like, you know, it's just organizing your calendar. And now, like, I've been in ministry long enough. I wish I can go back. Like, dude, I don't know. Like, you can't. I was young, ignorant. I didn't know what I was actually doing. So, yeah.
Well, man, you've done a lot, and I've appreciated it. It really has been.
Thank you.
One of those things that has encouraged me, and it's made me get over a lot of the things that hold me back. I love to edit. I really do love to edit. I just don't like recording myself. I have a really hard time recording myself, and I have a hard time just like acting like I don't care that there's a camera in my hand. You know what I mean? So that's my challenge. Yeah. But that's why I've shifted to this. Like part of it was like, man, I know myself and I know what's going to keep me from being able to keep going. So I did like 2-3 vlogs, and that was all I had, right? And I'm like, I can just talk to people. This is what I like doing.
Totally.
Talking to people. And there's a little bit of me that wants to be like the Black Carey Nieuwhof, maybe. I don't know.
I love it. Let's go.
Well, look, man, I want to respect your time. I know you're heading into Sabbath. You just got done pouring concrete and all that stuff. So we'll wrap up in a second. I want to ask you just a couple quick fire questions. And then if you have questions for me, you can ask me any questions, and we'll hopefully this has blessed a couple people. But first one, this is not a quick fire question. This is just a random Byron question. Okay. When are we going to open up a advertising agency together? Because you are great at storytelling, and man, all of your stuff looks great, and you do a lot of your stuff. I'm the same way. I do almost anything you see, I probably did it. But we got to work together, man. We could,
dude, I would love it. I'm such a fan of what you're doing. And it really is. I'm like, dude, I love his aesthetic. I love the fonts you choose and the color palette. I'm like, this guy gets it. And I know it's been all you. So I'm in, man. That's a way better side gig than concrete. So you just tell me when.
Maybe when we hit the 40, maybe that's our 40s plan, right? Like,
yes.
You know, once we get things rolling with the churches. All right.
I think it's me needing to visit you, though. I'd rather be in Daytona than, Phoenix, Arizona any time of the year. So,
well, hey, we can make that happen at any point. Quick fire questions. Here we go.
All right.
First one, books or podcasts? You watch a lot. You read a lot of books, but you also listen to podcasts, right? So books or podcasts?
Yeah. Books. By far.
Right. What's the last book?
I have a photographic memory, so like I love to quote to people, and so I can't remember a conversation well, but if I read it, I have a much higher success rate of like putting that in my sermon or inserting that into a conversation. What's the last book I read? I'm reading, it's a very bad habit. I have 7 books I'm reading right now. They're all almost done, but the one I'm most excited about recently is Remaking the World by Andrew Wilson, how 1776 changed everything. It's a fascinating historical look at like why we're so messed up today. So great book.
I dig it. I'm the opposite. Podcast all the way. I can read something and I can't tell you what I read an hour.
Funny.
Listen to a podcast. I can quote it every day of the week. All right.
That's amazing.
Barkley or Jordan?
Ooh, you're putting me in a tough spot because I'm a native Phoenician, and Jordan's the GOAT, though. I mean, you see it right there. It's in the background. That's an authenticated jersey signed from him. I also have a warm-up that he gave me when he played for the Wizards. So I have a connection to Michael Jordan. So he's the GOAT. But Barkley's great.
It's interesting, man. You're 31, so you grew up like really in the LeBron era. but you think Jordan's a GOAT. So
I've met LeBron several times. I have his headband, a wristband of his, and a signed jersey of his second year. I wish it was his rookie year. I'm really bummed about that. Yeah. But I nothing against him. I think the whole debate is annoying, but I'm Jordan. All the Space Jam. I think that's what grabbed my heart initially, and then when I met him when I was 13 at Michael Jordan camp, that's just what sealed the deal.
Yeah, I met him I've only met Jordan one time. He's from North Carolina. I've met his brother. I've met his brother a lot. He has nieces and nephews that went to school. Actually, he had a niece that graduated the same day as me in the same place. Like where I grew up, all the graduations are the same day. And
gotcha.
Their graduation was directly after ours. So his limousine was pulling up as we're walking out and the other school's walking in. But yeah, he's decent from where I've been meeting him. You were a lot closer because you were in the camp. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I have only had one chance to come to Phoenix. I was supposed to come. It was the year I got saved. And the reason why I didn't come is because after I came to know Jesus, I canceled everything. Like I was like, man, my life is different. So I didn't end up coming to Phoenix, but I will come to Phoenix one day. And I want to eat when I come out there, man. Where do I have to eat when I come to Phoenix?
Yeah. So East Valley is where I'm at. East Valley's the best. I know it doesn't rhyme, but it is way better than West Valley. East Valley's newer. If you're coming here, you need some Mexican food. Okay. So that's what we have. And the two places most people won't mention to you, but being East Valley, born and raised, Elmer's, which is right across the street from Chandler High. It's just amazing. And then Lulu's, which is in downtown Gilbert, which is a really fun vibe. It's where my dad grew up. Like he grew up going to Lulu's. Those are my two places I bring everybody to when they come into town. I'm not a foodie, so that's where those are my two special spots. Yeah. My associate pastor, he has a billion places you can go, but those are my two. That's my go-to. All Mexican food.
I'm not a foodie either. I'm not a foodie at all. I just like a decent place to eat and, good service. Last one. Or no, second to last one. Who should I have on this podcast? You said you've listened to the podcast. You're a fan of Carey Nieuwhof. Who do you think I should have on this podcast? And is there somebody that you can help me get on this podcast?
Yeah, I can. He's up and coming guy, man. His name's Jay Stovall.
Yeah.
Do you know Jay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Because of you.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So he actually just launched his church last Sunday. Mm-hmm. So I guess I suggest him so maybe I could be the only white guest you ever have. No, so with Jay Stovall, he's a good guy. He's had a lot of conversations with me because he's like, look, I love the spiritual formation stuff. Like he's gone with me to Portland for some of the conferences. He's like, but what does this look like in black spaces? Yeah. It's like, I don't think there's been enough language around it. It doesn't really connect the same way. And so he's asking those really tough questions and just trying to like exegete his culture, which I know is different than yours. You know, he's in California, right. Like the greater LA area. So he's doing some great stuff. They had a huge launch last Sunday. So our church has been supporting him. He's also somebody who just has a great designing eye. Like he's just great at video and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I love to sing his praises. We met in college. We've actually been to Malaysia together. We served there for a month playing basketball against other universities and then sharing the gospel with them at dinner after, which is super cool. Yeah. So we've had a really good friendship for a long time.
That's awesome. I followed him. I don't know if you told me to follow him directly or if you just mentioned him in a video or I can't remember what it was, but I know I followed him for probably the last year and a half or something like that.
He's well connected. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I saw the video when y'all went to Portland. What's the name of the church? I know it has a cool name too. It's like Portrait.
Bridgetown. No, sorry. You said in Portland. Yeah, his name is his church is Portrait, like Portrait Church. So it's like bringing like so that people can see Jesus.
Yeah,
it's a really good. His logo's great.
Cool. I checked them out last week. Whenever I saw that,
cool.
Started following them and all that stuff last week. Jay, would love to have you on the podcast. We're gonna make it happen.
He's good friends with John O too, by the way. So another guest. He has several friends that have already been on here. He's gonna be on it. Sorry, what's your next question? Last question.
Last question, man. How do you like rhyme so well? Like I try to do this every week, and I am horrible at it. It's probably because I'm not Baptist enough. That's probably it. But like, how do you do that?
I've been toning it down because, dude, there was a time where like for 6 months straight, every point had to rhyme. I was like, okay, I'm overkilling this. This is not good. But when you do that for a year, you learn the craft, So my only tip is I have to write it down with a pen. It's not typing. It's just a way to idea generate. And then I'm very good friends with thesaurus.com and rhymezone.com. Those are the two things.
Wait, what was the second one?
Rhymezone.com. So you just put in the last word of that first line, and it gives you all of the different words that can rhyme with it. So then you say, is there a connection here? All right, boom, And so, that's the gift that keeps on giving.
I never thought of that. Rhyme Zone. Okay.
Rhymezone.com.
I'm going to start. Mine never rhyme. And sometimes there's no alliteration. It's just like the most random.
It's good.
I'm like, this is what's in the text. I'm sorry. It doesn't rhyme.
Right.
But I understand that it's a lot easier to embody and walk away with when it does rhyme. So.
Yeah, that's true. I think I've done a million of them. I think there's like 10 that my church is proud of. So my batting average is very low.
I dig it, man. Well, look, hey, I pray this is not our last conversation in this.
Same.
Moment. I know we're gonna talk probably offline, a little bit more. But man, I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope people will have gotten to know a little bit more about you, and people like myself, Charlie, and Parks, like we've gotten to know you and see what you've done. But a lot of the people in our circle have not yet been introduced to you. And I pray that the same impact you've had on us, you can spread that impact on them as well. Especially like, man, the non-anxious pastor stuff. A lot of people in those spaces need that type of resource. Your dedication to the spiritual rhythms and all that stuff. A lot of people need those resources. And some of those rhymes, man. A lot of people need some of those rhymes.
Oh, man.
So
thank you. Appreciate you.
Any last words from Trey Van Camp?
Oh man, any last words? You know what? I'm coming empty. Yeah, it's just one day at a time, man. This week has just been so tough. And you know what? Let me just, if you have time, let me pop out this prayer that I've been reading.
For sure.
And I was here trying to think if I had it memorized, but I don't. But there's a few lines in here that have been so helpful to my soul. So it's called Patient Trust by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. That's exactly how you pronounce it. No idea. But he says this. He says, above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. And we should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. And I love this line. And yet, it is the law of all progress that it is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. So that's just been helpful for me. And then he says at the very end of it, give our Lord the benefit of believing that his hand is leading you.
Wow.
And accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete. I think that's a good word for every church planner. That is for sure. So keep fighting the good fight and trust in the slow work of God.
Amen. Well, there's nothing more to be added to that. Continue with that. And also remember to live all of your life in Jesus Christ. Trey Van Camp interview is now a wrap.